across an archaeological site, we would appreciate knowing about it, because chances are, especially if you're out and about in the backcountry, you're not going to know about it. So any information you can provide to us along the way would be really helpful.
When I first started working here as an archaeologist, we had a 2% inventory. So 4% since I've been here, and we estimate somewhere around 50,000 sites in the park. So that the question of how many undiscovered sites is, in that 46,000 range. So,
one other quick thing before, I forgot to say this when I was doing my little spiel. There's 2 things that are coming out over the next year that will be really good information for you. Through GCA's assistance, we are coming out with an archaeological synthesis monograph. So it's looking at everything that we knew about Grand Canyon archaeology from all the past excavations, all the past survey, and putting it all together for the state of the knowledge of human history in Grand Canyon at the present time. That'll probably be published in the next few months through the GCA. And the other thing that we have coming online soon will be a virtual museum. So we'll have prehistoric and historic artifacts, boats, a virtual tour of the watchtower. We're doing that in association with the Northern Arizona University, but through a fundraising process with the Grand Canyon Association. So we'll be watching for that, and you should watch for that too, because it'll be a really great opportunity for you to learn about Grand Canyon human history and be able to give your clients the real story as we go today. Very bad.
So you mentioned at the beginning about the park being substantially wilderness, and I would agree. A huge portion of the park is wilderness, has wilderness character, is deserving of wilderness designation by Congress. But a substantial percentage of national parks have their lands designated as wilderness by Congress. We have 0 designation of wilderness by Congress. What does it take? What does it need to take? I mean, I think over 90% of the park would be designated.
Yeah, so the question is about wilderness designation for Grand Canyon. And I can relate to you what I heard just the other day when a similar question came up. And the answer was, indeed, about 94% of the park was recommended in the original wilderness recommendation that was submitted to the Department of the Interior in 1980. That nomination was updated with the benefit of maps and GPS and GIS and everything else in 1993. And there has still been no action taken on it. Park Service management policies tell us that we need to manage the parklands as wilderness and not do anything to affect their potential suitability. And that's how we manage. So even though we don't have officially designated wilderness, we still manage as wilderness. And unfortunately, wilderness designation in this case is a congressional action, and there really hasn't been a push for it. And luckily, our management policies allow us to manage as if we are wilderness. So that's the only answer I can give you. Let's see, right there.
My question is for Ellen. So you mentioned that possibly we'll come across like undocumented archaeological sites, possibly with guests. So could you give us some guidelines about how to behave and still be within the guidelines of our rules?
If you follow leave no trace principles, you'll be doing the right thing, and follow whatever your backcountry permit says, depending on where you are. So, look but don't touch if you can. Try to observe from a distance if you can, rather than actually go into the site. But sometimes there'll be times when you will enter the site, so you just follow the best leave no trace practices that you can so that you don't disturb things, don't take things, obviously, that's pretty obvious. Leave things where they are, and leave them as you found them. And the best kind of information you can give us is a GPS position and maybe a photograph or 2 of what you see.
So it would be just the area like law enforcement survival if we were you photos?
No, because you're almost certain to come across archaeological sites in the backcountry. It's just how you behave while you're there that makes the big difference.
Every trail in the park, except for the South Kaibet, follows the prehistoric route. You will encounter them.
And then the other thing is, be sure to take the site etiquette policy that I brought for you today and that Jack will post on the webpage. It tells you what sites you can actually guide your clients to. And those are the great places to teach the lessons about how to be in an archaeological site, how to enjoy an archaeological site, without disturbing it. And then when you get to the point where you're at a place that is not on the list, but we didn't know about, you can encourage those behaviors and reinforce those behaviors to keep those sites pristine.
Okay. I'm going to go over to this side and then I'll come back over here. So everything.
For the fisheries person, as Lake Mead continues to drop, it's kind of a two-part question. Would the Pierce Ferry Rapid prevent the razorblacks from coming up from Lake Mead?
No.
And then, they can come up through that thing? And then
So far.
as if Lake Mead were to fill up and eliminate Pierce Ferry Rapid again, would that mean that more non-native fish would swim upstream into Grand Canyon?
Potentially, I mean, that's a good question. We're seeing razorback sucker coming up and back and forth, and there's a potential for a lot of other species to be doing the same thing, whether the lake is low or high. And that's one of the concerns that has been addressed with temperature issues. I mean, one of the changes that the dam has made is change the temperature regime, which is not favorable to native fish, generally speaking. And so there were some talks years ago about a temperature control device on the dam. And that brings up the question that if you were to warm the water, there's a lot of warm water non-natives down in the lake that might really, really flourish under those conditions also, which is kind of what you see above the dam with those other populations of humpback chub. So there is some monitoring by some of the other agencies, mostly in the main stem. It would be kind of a response like we did with the green sunfish. If we see any large spike of any potential non-native invader, we would have some sort of response dictated by the fish management plan that we put together. But yeah, razorback can swim that rapid so far.
Wow.
And I think the other thing is that, we talked, Emily just mentioned the temperature control device. One of the things that we're seeing because of lower reservoir conditions is the water is warming anyway, which is the potential for an even greater threat. I was at a meeting a few weeks ago, and not being a fisheries biologist, I found a fascinating gape analysis demonstration of a smallmouth bass, which mouth was bigger than its body. And we talk about threats to native fish and the possibility of predation. We talk about trout. Well, trout's mouth compared to a smallmouth bass is pretty small. And we know that there's smallmouth in Lake Mead, and I think as we look at the warmer water, that's a real concern more than sort of the hydrology that we see. So it is potentially, and we have mechanisms in place in our fish plan to address that. The response to the green sunfish was an example of that. And we'll just have to keep monitoring and watching and hoping that our native population continues to grow. This side.
Yeah. If it's not a determined date, is there any rough estimate about how long maintenance or the repair of the vegetation pipeline is going to last?
Well, so they finished the first phase, and they were originally planning to put in a 50,000-gallon tank and pump house at Phantom Ranch starting this fall, but they've decided that they will reevaluate the pipeline as a whole and come up with a consolidated plan for dealing with the pipeline as a whole instead of piecemealing it. So there's going to be a break in the action before you see more construction going on.
Okay.
Perhaps there was an estimate which would have had to be done away with. Readdressing the issue entirely, but is there any estimate as to what renovating the pipeline might cost?
Wait, I see Brian in the very back of the room back there. How much do we estimate now the pipeline project will cost?
160 million. And that's not dealing with the distribution areas, that's just the line itself.
Okay.
Thank you.
Let's see, let's go back over here.
Concerning cameras removal, I'm under the impression that you're actively trying to remove cameras in the side canyons, but that at the same time, in certain places, almost protecting it in the main river corridor. That seems confusing.
Well, so Tamarisk in the main river corridor, there's really no chance of human removal of getting it all out. The Tamarisk beetle might be defoliated to the point that it is dying off. In the side canyons, once we remove that, there's no really new introduction of it to get back up there. So side canyons, we can reinvigorate and recreate that native habitat by getting it out, giving room for the willows to come back, and And then the Colorado River corridor is a whole different story.
So the main stem Colorado River is dam control, and it's a different situation with the Tamara's beetle taking out a lot of we're looking in the long-term experimental management plan for some system-wide mitigation for removing some of the non-natives. And when we've gone through and put natives in, they seem to outcompete some of the non-natives. So we're hoping that we can actually be able to make some inroads, even though the whole corridor, 277 miles, is something we won't be able to do, that we may be able to at least target some areas. That's what some of this restoration work that we're looking at, the main stem that Sarah talked about, will target.
Cool. John, there's a question down here. Susan?
Oh, I just had a question. Do you have a delivery date on when you're going to be taking the fish to Beaver, down by Beaver?
May 18th.
May 18th? Okay. Because we get a chance to, let them go.
Yeah, we've worked before with some of the folks
And that way
got
we can
kids
let
down.
our guests know, that they'll be doing a delivery.
Yeah, we'll be there.
Thank you.
I'm going to go to the bathroom.
For wildlife, you mentioned Conkalotch, and I'm just curious, what are the numbers going up, staying, going down?
It depends which species. Like last year, the red-tailed numbers were way up, and I mentioned the 7,000 and some birds. Over 4,000 of them were either sharp-shinned hawks or Cooper's hawks. So when you look at the graphs in the report, sharp-shinned, Coopers, red-tailed hawks, and actually osprey this past year were trending up, not just from last year, but over the course of time have been trending upwards. On the opposite end, the American kestrel numbers tend to be trending down. Golden eagle numbers trending down. There was one this year, and there's another one I can't remember. So even though there were a lot of birds this year, some of the species weren't doing as well as others.
Back over here.
How about crayfish? And what are, obviously that is potentially a very big threat with the warming of the waterways. How are you guys dealing with that?
We haven't seen, I responded a long time ago to reports of some coming through the dam. We went up and looked around Lee's Ferry a little bit, and it's just not a great place for them to get a foothold, at least up there. There are some in some of the tributaries down in Lower Grand Canyon. They're in Surprise and some of those places. And so far, the river is still just too cold, and they're just not making that spread. That would be another thing that would be addressed in the fish management plan, though. I mean, again, like any invasive anything that we start to see a spike of or a change in distribution of, we could do some pretty rapid action, and we would try to do some pretty rapid.
Tag on to that aquatic invasives, the clog mussel.
Clog mussel, was been in Lake Powell for quite a while and has come through into Grand Canyon. And there were some studies, or there were some thoughts that they wouldn't really get established here because of the hydrodynamics of the river. They need sort of slower habitat for their young stages, for their velager stages. And we'll kind of see. I mean, we really want to encourage people in the water to be cleaning, drying, and draining everything before they're coming. In Grand Canyon, even though they're here, we have to treat it like they're here. Anytime you're taking anything to another waterway, you need to be cleaning, drying, and draining everything. We're seeing them. Our crews caught an adult, down in Lower Grand Canyon. And, so as much as the hydrodynamics shouldn't let them establish, we know there's eddies, we know there's pockets, we know there's places that they really could. So
and the clog mussel certainly encrusted itself on Lake Canyon Dam and on Hoover Dam as well. We're fortunate that we have swift water, sediment-laden water. We don't think we're going to see that kind of problem, but we are technically an infested waterway, and we'll have to wait and see. So you do have stuff in the river. Make sure you clean, green, and dry, even your personal items and things like that if you're taking someplace else. It's big messaging on the aquatic invasive front.
And that's true of other systems too. Havasu Creek, we found the New Zealand mud snail in there. Those systems aren't great for that, but you want to be thinking about that all the time. You just don't know what is in these places.
What's the highest upriver that you've seen the quagga mussel?
They're all over Lee's Ferry now. All over. They are established.
None of the dumps though, right? They're just...
No, they are.
Or they...
Yeah, they're all over Lee's Ferry.
So have they come down from the dam?
Yeah, they came through.
That's the idea.
They're also in need.
They jump up the top.
They do.
It's fascinating to watch.
Do they do a backflip?
So, one more question here, and then so we'll take two more questions, one of which will be yours, and then we'll... I know. We're going to give them a little extra break. Thank you. Yeah.
So I'm curious about all this great science, and we get to hear what you're doing, and with 5 million tons of visitors, you know where they're all getting this stuff of information. What tools are you using to communicate the science you're learning and discovering to the greater broader world?
So the question is about how are we getting our messages out? Part of it is right here, because you all have influence over a lot of guests that you're guiding into the canyon. Same thing with the river guides, similar kind of thing. Social media is a big thing. We've got stuff up on our webpage. We do an awful lot of professional papers as well. And work with our interpretive staff so that they can include all of this information. We do resource updates for them. If you have other ideas of how we can better reach folks, you know, we would love to kind of talk about different ways we can do it. I mean, we have a relatively small staff, and these guys are constantly kind of saying, oh, but we're doing a lot of great stuff. How can we get that information out? And this is one of them.
And part of it's with the interpretive staff at the park. You know, we feed them a lot of materials, and they have access to like my reports if they want to learn about hawk watcher and things. So, you know, you can't give them everything, but that helps to get the message out.
Great. And then there was one, yeah, way back there.
For Sarah, how important are volunteers to the Vegetation?
So important. Volunteers in Vegetation clock over 18,000 hours a year. You guys made it 20,000 hours a year. And fishing too, all over science.
We rely on volunteers from each other.
Yeah.
Couldn't do it without you. Yeah, thank you guys for being here, for asking questions, for being interested in being stewards of the resource. Our offices are across the kind of kitty court across the way. If you ever have questions, I mean, you can access almost any of us through Jack. Go online, you can find any one of us. Just go to the park's website. So we really appreciate the opportunity.
Cool. Thank you. All right.